So here we have a precision steering damper, and like many others, mine began to leak, and so that motivated me, of course, to rebuild it. And since there aren't really any rebuild tutorials out there, I figured I would take the time to share some information on how to rebuild one of these mystical little devices. So before you begin, you're going to need, of course, to take it off of your machine. You'll need some 20 weight fork oil. Precision recommends using Motul brand, but whatever brand you see fit. You'll need some little bit of anti-seize, not quite as much as what you see here, but just a little bit. Some small cleaning Q-tip type things for getting in some small spaces. You'll need a syringe for refilling this thing with fluid. A 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench, and I think there was one a little bit smaller. Maybe it was a 2 millimeter for the set screws on top, and a couple of small pick-like devices like this here, again just for cleaning things up. So if we turn this little device over, you're going to see a whole bunch of little fasteners. And the first thing you're going to want to do is take these two small set screws out, these flathead set screws, and drain the fluid out. Now make sure that the set screw inlet is very clean, and the wrench, your Allen wrench, is set down inside of the set screw as far as possible, because with this countersink, they tend to kind of really stick in place because there's so much surface area contacting the bottom side of the screw. So anyway, after cleaning that screw out real good, make sure your wrench is in there really nice and settled like, and break these two guys loose. And then once you get it broken loose, you can turn it over right side up over your favorite oil catch pan. Twist this little axle back and forth, and that's going to effectively push out all the fluid that's remaining inside of there into your catch pan. Once you've done that, remove all of the screws that fasten this bottom piece onto the top piece, and you can go ahead and pull it away and expose the magic that's inside of this little tiny damper. And one of the serviceable item that we're going to be going for in here is this big large O-ring. It's a really thin diameter O-ring that effectively creates the seal in between the bottom plate and the area where this volume of fluid is trapped. Going over to the top side, you can remove these set screws that are basically mechanical stops for your adjustment knobs. Take those two flathead screws out, and then you'll be able to back the adjustment knobs all the way out. Once you get the adjustment knobs all the way out, here's what they look like. You can set them aside, and then push this little wiper right on out of the center, just like that. So with this center portion set aside and removed from the upper body, you're going to expose another serviceable part, which is an O-ring just down inside of this cylinder right here that keeps the fluid inside of this upper body. And the O-ring is serviceable, and just above the O-ring is another really hardened cylindrical rubber piece that is basically a means of keeping dust out from getting down to that O-ring. So when trying to remove this, it was pretty difficult, and didn't seem to want to come out with a reasonable amount of force on it, so I decided to leave that part in and move forward with not replacing it and only putting in a new O-ring. So once you get that O-ring out and have removed this O-ring, you now have a completely disassembled steering damper. So with these adjustment screws, you have another serviceable part on here, just a tiny little O-ring that is a little bit of a bear to work off because they're kind of made out of some pretty hard rubber. So you can just take your little pick tool here, get it up and over, work it down the threads. Also, these are identical parts, so no need to fret about which one goes where. And one thing that we skipped over a little bit earlier was on the bottom side, when you remove these flathead screws, there's an O-ring on the bottom side of them. So, and you can you can see that that O-ring actually fits down into a counter bore that's just beneath the countersink on this bottom plate. So again, another serviceable part. So next question, where do you get these parts? These O-rings, believe it or not, are common sizes that I was able to find down at my local Napa Auto Parts, including the one inside of the top portion that serves as the O-ring to this guy. The one that was a little bit tricky to locate, and I had to go to a different store, was this bottom O-ring down here. This was it's a pretty thin diameter as far as the material thickness is concerned, and a relatively large diameter overall shape. With your completely disassembled steering damper, you can now take all your individual O-rings out, and keeping them all nice and organized, put them in a little Ziploc baggie, run down to the auto parts store and get you some new rubber to come back home and reassemble this guy. So I'm going to begin the reassembly, and after I've got it all reassembled, we will walk through how to properly fill this thing up and ensure that there is no air whatsoever inside of the damper so that it works exactly how it should. So if you notice, when we put these flathead screws in, we want to back the adjusters all the way up until they contact the bottom side of the flathead screw. Again, the flathead screw just serves as a mechanical stop for those adjustment screws. So looking at the bottom, again we're going back to where these two plug holes are. We're going to remove the O-ring off of this flathead screw and put him down inside of this counter bore. Do the same thing with the other one. So now we want to fill up our drugstore syringe as much fluid as possible. And looking ahead of time, I knew that I was going to need a little bit of help holding this thing, so I sawed up a piece of foam to hold this little guy in place. And when you're filling this thing, you want to make sure that the wiper is rotated in such a way that it doesn't block you from filling that volume up with fluid in there. Because if this thing is rotated in the right orientation, it will keep you from being able to put fluid in. So we're going to seal up against our O-ring and fill this little guy up. Okay, do the same thing to the other side. You see the fluid coming out on the other side, and that's okay. I kind of anticipate this to be a little bit of a messy procedure. And so now what we're trying to do is get every bit of the air out of this thing as possible, as much as possible. So we want to slowly rotate that wiper, and you should be able to see a couple of bubbles every now and again, hopefully. Oh, there goes a couple. And be very careful not to draw in air at this point. Because the air, of course, will effectively add empty, useless volume into that space, which we do not need. So now wiping back the other way. Again, we're trying to just watch for bubbles and ensure that we do not draw any air into the system.
Okay, looks like we can apply a little bit more fluid here. Alright, just reached the end of that direction, so we'll go back the other way. Alright, that bubble's coming out now.
Okay guys, so I'm pretty sure I've gotten all the air out of my steering damper after cycling it back and forth and several times and refilling each one of those wells. So now we get to call on one of our little wiping tools. Take a little bit of anti-seize. There we go. We need some on there. And apply it to the bottom side of this screw. It doesn't take much. And again, what we're doing is just good manners for the next time we have to open this thing up. Okay guys, well, after repeating our back and forth motion, purging out all of the air from this little system, we have successfully filled our rebuilt steering damper full of fluid. And now Precision Racing Products specifies a test procedure to execute before we totally call this system good. And so what they tell us to do is to run both of the adjustment screws all the way to the bottom, wait 5 seconds. Then choose one adjustment screw, either one, doesn't matter which one. Back it all the way out until it stops at the mechanical stop. Wait another 5 seconds. And then from there, we rotate the screw until we feel a little bit of back pressure in the screw. So we're going to feel a little bit of resistance as the screw starts to go down because pressure will build inside of the damper. From that point, the screw should be within 1/4 to 1 full turn of bottoming out on its thread. And so here we go. We're going to work through it together. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pick one side, come all the way out with it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now we look for back pressure. There it is. Okay. So from this point, I should be within 1/4 to 1 full turn from bottoming the screw out. And I am, just shy of. So with this being the bottom of the screw, I know that the fluid level within the damper is correct. Okay guys, I have rebuilt my damper, and as you saw a minute ago, it passes the test. So let's say that you don't pass the test, then what? So a couple of situations. You're going to have a situation where, let's say your screw that you've chosen for your test goes all the way down and you never really feel any pressure feedback. Then that means that you need to add more fluid to your damper. So what you're going to do, back it all the way out till it hits the mechanical stop, remove these screws, and repeat the process that we outlined earlier, where you're adding fluid, moving our wiper back and forth, getting all the air out, and ultimately putting more fluid into the damper. So, other situation, what if you tighten this all the way down what if you tighten to the point in which you reach that pressure feedback, and then you count more than one full rotation of the screw until it bottoms out? Well, that's going to indicate having too much fluid. So what you will then need to do is move the screw to the point in which you feel the pressure feedback, turn the damper over, break the seal on one of these flathead screws, and turn the adjustment screw in just a little bit to let out some fluid. And then, of course, retighten that flathead screw. And then from there, you're going to repeat the test to ensure that you are, in fact, within 1/4 to a full turn from bottoming out at the pressure point. So, I really hope that all of that made sense. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and hope that you're able to save a little bit of money by this little how-to. Feel free to leave any comments below, any questions or anything like that. I'll be glad to help. And thanks for watching, guys.